Today, we're going to talk about asset-based lenders, what they finance, where to find them, get the money, close the deal. And here's what you will learn from this webinar today. Asset-based lenders, what they finance, and where to find them, how to properly qualify your asset-based loan so you can get it, how to navigate the lender's skin in the game rule. Now, you all know what that rule is because you've gone to lenders and you try to put your no cash deal together. And the lender says, look, you don't have any skin in the game. You're not taking any risk. We're taking all the risk and they won't loan you the money. So we're going to show you how to navigate that skin in the game rule today, how to make the double escrow technique work for you, how to use bridge loans and transaction loans to complete your financing. And number 6, how to keep shopping for credit, multiple inquiries from lowering your credit score. A lot of folks are afraid to go out there and ask too many times for these lenders to look at you as whether you're credit worthy or not. And so these multiple inquiries, people are worried that they're going to reduce their credit score. So we're going to address all these issues today so that you can confidently go into the marketplace when you've got your company ready to finance and just get it done. Type your questions and comments into the question box on the right side panel. I love it when people raise their hands because it gives me a chance to actually talk to real folks and tease out of them, if you will, the real elements of the question and then get to the real elements of the answer, because it's a little bit of give and take and it works better. If we don't get to your question today, no problem. Just send me your question at bazaarfinancing.com and more than happy to answer it. And in a lot of cases, those questions serve as great opportunities for me to build out our presentations to you, which already has answers to the questions in it. So I just want you to know they're helpful to me when you do right. All right, today's session, asset-based lender financing. And it's frankly all about playing by the rules. If you've ever gone to a bank or to an asset-based lender, it becomes abundantly clear right away that they have a set of rules and processes and procedures and all that kind of stuff that is going to determine whether or not they make a loan, and even if they make the loan, how it's going to get handled and validated all the way through that process. So they're rules-based folks, and it doesn't do you any good to ignore their rules. What you want to do is understand their rules and understand how to make their rules work for you. So that's what we're going to do today. So asset-based lenders have 2 different sets of rules for lending money to businesses, 2 separate sets of rules. One set of rules pertains to financing an existing owner and their business, okay, an existing owner and their business entity for additional working capital. So I already own a business, I go to an asset-based lender, or I got assets, machinery and equipment, accounts receivable, maybe even some real estate, lots of different assets. And I want to finance them and I need more working capital. That's one set of rules, and this is what an asset-based lender does when you own a business. And these rules are primarily based on the value of the assets which will serve as the collateral for the loan. So the asset-based lender isn't interested in your credit worthiness so much. They're not interested in what the assets look like. They're interested in how much money they can get for those assets, since they're going to have them as collateral for the loan if they have to sell them to get repaid back. That's their primary worry. And in financing a business, frankly, it's their only real worry. But things are going to change here in a little bit in a moment, because the second set of rules applies to financing the acquisition. So now we're going to have some different rules other than the simple go to the asset-based lender, show them your assets, they'll do an appraisal on them, whatever they're worth, they'll loan you some level of that, 60, 70, 80% sometimes of what those assets are worth. And if you don't pay them, they don't worry about it. They're going to come in, scarf up their collateral, they'll be repaid. And yes, they take some risks. Yes, it's a process, but they've already got built into their interest rates and their security agreements, everything it needs to protect them and ensure that they're going to make money. So that's where they are there. But when you come in to buy a business, these different set of rules are going to apply. Now, these rules are essentially the same, except the lender insists that a certain percentage of the acquisition price, usually around 10% or more, comes from the buyer's personal funds. Now, why is that important to them? The purpose of this rule is to ensure the buyer has a personal investment in the acquisition, also known as skin in the game. The lender doesn't want to be the only party taking the risk. They want to know that you've got up money up in front of them, that you're going to have to lose your money before they even begin to lose their money, so that you've got skin in the game, and that skin in the game is going to cause you to work harder, be more prolific in what you do, bring out the very best fighter in you to make sure that you survive and can repay them, because you're going to lose your money first. So that's their mindset. That's where they're coming from with this. And that's why it's so important. And frankly, lenders have found that when borrowers share the risk, they found that in the times that buyer didn't have skin in the game, when the going got tough, they got running. And all of a sudden, they had this colossal amount of collateral, hopefully, that may have got misspent, misappropriated. The buyer ran to South America or wherever they went to. They couldn't find them. They have assets all over the place. They can't even locate them, and they got to go figure out how to go find their collateral and hopefully get their money back. So the lenders over time learn that they can't do this without having a borrower with skin in the game. Now, if you own the business already, you have skin in the game because they're not going to loan you 100% of the financing. So the part that they're not loaning you is your skin in the game. That's what you've built up in that business. You worked hard to put it there. And so you don't want to lose that. So you have the skin in the game. But when you're the buyer, the only way you have skin in the game in their mind is for you to put up a certain proportion of the purchase price. They'll finance the rest through the asset-based loan, but they want to know you're in front of them. Now, there are 3 solutions to skin in the game rule. Okay, so here's the skin in the game rule. You got to have it. All right, now how do they do this, or how do they enforce this? And then what are the solutions to this? And there are 3 of them, and I'm going to take you through all 3 of them. In all cases, you establish a special purpose entity, they're called SPEs, to be the buyer, which typically is a limited liability company. Okay, so now expunge from your mind that you personally are going to buy this company. It's not going to happen that way. You're going to personally establish a limited liability company. The limited liability company will be the buyer. You own the limited liability company, so you're going to end up owning the business because you own the company that owns the business. So you're going to still be the owner, but now it's not you personally that's making the purchase. It's the limited liability company that you own. I know I said that a couple of times, different ways. I just want to make sure everybody understands the nuance here. You are not the buyer. It's your company that you formed that is the buyer. All right, now solution 1, because remember, this is true for every one of these 3 solutions. You're going to form this SPE. All right, so solution 1, you have and provide your own skin in the game money. That doesn't sound very bizarre financing or creative, but it's certainly a solution. You have the money, you don't mind putting some skin in the game, and so you do it, okay? And you provide the skin in the game funds and can choose to leave it in the LLC, your company, for additional working capital, or reimburse yourself after the acquisition is closed. Okay, so not very creative, but it's a solution. Let's look at solution number 2. An investor provides the required funds. Okay, so what you've done in the purchase of this company, you've evaluated it, right? You know how profitable it is and how much money it's making. You can see from the amount of profit and cash flow that the company has that all of this debt you're creating is not only going to be collateralized in full for the debt that you're going to incur, but that your cash flow in the business is going to easily enable you to amortize that debt and pay it off and make surplus profits in the company. And if it's not true, you shouldn't be buying the company. So that should be true of it. So you don't have the money. So what you do is you figure out, of my surplus profit, what could I pay to an investor who will provide the skin in the game money, not to me, the skin in the game money to my LLC, because who is the lender going to be looking at for skin in the game money? They're not looking at you personally. They're looking at the buyer. The buyer is your LLC. The lender doesn't know whose money got into the LLC that's putting the skin in the game, but all they know is they got skin in the game. It came from your investor. You gave them either a piece of your company, meaning equity in your company. You gave them some method of getting their cash back, either as the form of a royalty that they earn because they put up the money. You give them a repayment plan for the money, but they still keep a portion of the equity. You've come up with some plan to make your investor a very happy person, and that solves your skin in the game problem. So the investor contributes the necessary skin in the game money as an investment into your LLC. Problem solved, right? Problem solved. The investor can be repaid after the acquisition with a profit or remain a minority owner of your LLC. Any combination of different methods that you learn in bizarre financing can be used to make your investor very happy, but problem solved. Okay, solution number 3. And this is the one that we're trying to make sure that you understand today, because this is the one that really is creative in the sense of how it gets you around the issues. But solution number 3 is to artfully navigate the asset-based lender's skin in the game rule. All right, so the rule is going to be there. This is what the lender is going to be looking for, but we're going to be artful in how we navigate that rule. And here's how we're going to do it. You do not seek financing for the acquisition from the asset-based lender. You don't do that, okay? You never talk acquisition money when you're talking to that lender. Instead, you approach the asset-based lender to finance the assets of the business post-acquisition. In other words, Mr. Lender, I'm going to be buying this company. And once I've purchased it, This is what my asset structure is going to look like. These are the assets I will own. This is the income I will have. And I want to know if you will finance me with an asset-based loan of X amount after I've acquired the company. The magic words there are after I acquired the company. So the lender is now not thinking rule set number 2, that they're loaning you the money to buy the company. They're thinking rule set number 1, which is you're going to be the owner. So whatever the assets are worth, we can loan you the money based on the assets, and that's the only qualification we really need to be concerned about. So all conversations with the lender discuss only funding once you own the business. Now you've got to get that mindset clear, because everything you language to that lender is language from the place of after I'm the owner, okay? And you don't want to slip up, so you got to get this really well into your head that you only talk in language in terms of after the purchase. All right. This approach exempts you from the skin in the game rule, because now they don't look to you to put skin in the game. They assume you're already the owner now and that you'll have skin in the game. You request permission from the seller to allow your lenders to inspect the company's assets as part of your and your lender's due diligence process. Because in order to get your loan closed, even though the other owner is sitting there owning the business, okay, that's not going to be a question now, because they know you're going to buy the business, but they're not loaning the money till afterwards. But they still got to know before they commit to the loan, what are these assets? They may have to have one of their auctioneers go into the building, and they use what's called a clicker to go asset by asset and click in $100 units what they think those assets are worth in the liquidation markets or whatever market valuations they're going to use. So they got to do all that stuff. They got to see the condition of the assets. They have to do all that, but it's not a problem, because your seller knows you've got to inspect these assets. Your seller knows your lenders have to inspect these assets. And this sets the opening for all this to get done while the seller is still the owner of the business. You establish a double escrow, and then you go into our Bizarre Financing Essentials materials. It tells you exactly how to set up the double escrow, as explained in the Bizarre Financing Essentials training, so that the asset-based lender grants the loan, and here in quotation marks, after your LLC owns the business and its assets. Now remember, we're going to use simultaneously closing escrows. When they simultaneously close, your documents that you've signed for loans and all of that stuff to the asset-based lender, that all gets transmitted to them after you own the business. So the closing is legitimately happening, where your documents are being delivered to all of the various parties after the closing, including they get their money. The seller gets his money after the closing. All right. So this is how that all comes together. You complete the necessary paperwork with the lender as if your LLC is already the owner of the to be acquired business. So all the paperwork sitting in the escrow is all signed as of the date of the closing. All right. So that's all done. It's all signed. It's all ready to be delivered to every party that's appropriate. All agreements are dated as of the closing day and signed by the new business owner. And remember, it's not you, it's your LLC. You'll sign it, but it'll be as manager of my LLC, or it'll be as president of the LLC, or it'll be as something title of the LLC. It's not you personally that's signing for this as of the closing date. The funds, agreements, and other closing documents are distributed to the parties according to the escrow instructions for both simultaneous closing escrows. Okay. Now, if you've gone through the Bizarre Financing Essentials training, you should be pretty comfortable with this information here, because you've already had a very good explanation of it really within that training itself. Okay. In lieu of a double escrow, use a bridge or transaction loan. Now, these could be used with a double escrow, independently of a double escrow, but I want to make sure you know what both of these are and how they work to help you to get your asset-based loan. Transaction loans are typically paid back instantly. Okay, so what's a transaction loan? There are people, which if you go into the research center of Bizarre Financing, you have access to that, where you can go into our research center and you can look up transaction lenders, okay? And so that'll help you to know who they are and how to reach them. But here's what they do. They look at your deal and they say, look, we don't mind putting up the money for this because we have the cash. We physically have cash, but we don't want to take any risk. We want to just make money on the fact that we have money available. It's a way we leverage our funds to make more money. We'll look at your deal, but it's got to be structured so that the minute we make the loan, we get our money back instantly. We don't want to take any risk. We'll charge you 1.5% for the money, 2% for the money, 3% for the money, depending on how complex your deal is and what hurdles they have to get over in order to get the deal papered and looking the way they need it to look for their comfort. But they're going to charge you a fee for this. And at the end of the day, money will appear at a bank, 3 million, 5 million, 10 million, whatever amount of money you need will appear at the bank. The bank uses the money to close the deal, but the deal closes through the double escrow, and they get the money right back and pay it right back to the transaction lender. But this enables you to look to all the world like you have put your own money in the deal, because real money is going to flow through those accounts. Okay. The transaction lender isn't going to take any risks. They're happy to do it. They make their premium. They were never out their money for a minute. So it's like making money on nothing to them. They just happen to have money, and it's the way they make more money on the money that they have. Simple business transaction for them. So that's a transaction loan, and it's instantaneous. Then there are bridge loans. They may be paid back instantaneously, like a transaction loan, or up to several months later with good credit. So let's say your LLC has good credit. Maybe you brought in an investor for part of the money, but you don't have it all from the investor. And so now you're going to a bank and you're getting a bridge loan, but they're looking at your LLC. They see its worthiness with credit. They see an equity value in the LLC, which was put up by your investor. So whatever that picture looks like, you can then get qualified for a bridge loan with a bank, and they may want to be paid back instantaneously, all cool, or they may give you a couple of months to pay it back, enabling this to not have to even go through a double escrow, because you can buy the business, you have the bridge loan, you're funded to do it. Then you go out, you start making profits, you start refinancing a few of the assets and whatever else that you're going to do, and now you have the money to pay back the bridge loan from your asset-based loan, right? Because you get the asset-based loan really, truly after you're closing, because you use the bridge loan to close your deal. Now, I know I'm talking a little fast here. Just remember, this is all recorded, and so you're going to have the ability to go back and listen to this over and over again. And if you have the kind of player that'll slow me down, you're going to even listen to me at a lower voice as you slow me down, but it'll all hopefully be clear. Okay, apply for these loans as soon as you are confident that you qualify for the asset-based loan. A lot of times people ask me, when do I apply for the loan? Do I apply for these other loans first or the asset-based loan first? Don't worry about that. It's a really simple process. All you want to know is the key loan is your asset-based loan, right? That's the loan that lets you permanently now own the business. Everything else is temporary, okay? So you just want to know you can qualify for that permanent funding for whatever amount it is that you need, and then you go for your other financings, your closing financing, your transactional or your bridge loan. You go for those after you've secured or gotten your commitment relative to your asset-based loan. So now you got one, and then you can quickly put together the others once you got your asset-based loan in place. Now, a lot of questions, by the way, that I've gotten before today, I'm trying to address those. That's what I mentioned earlier. It's great when you ask questions because I know what your blocks are, what's concerning you. And one of those concerns is about hard inquiries lowering people's credit scores. Everybody's afraid, gee, if I apply too many times for credit and trying to find the right lender and all that stuff, it's going to adversely affect my credit, okay? And if you're concerned, don't be. Okay, and here's why. It is the your LLC, that is applying for the loans, not you personally. You are not personally applying for any loans here. And any lender wanting to know your credit background, and then the only reason they want to know that because they know you're not applying for the loan, is they do want maybe your personal guarantee, so they do care about your credit. But at the very least, they want to know, are you an upstanding person? Do you pay back money when you owe it? Are you a flaky person that they shouldn't even be thinking of loaning money to? They want to know your credit background. But they cannot pull a report as if you are personally requesting more credit. They can pull a background report, but they can't label it that you're applying for credit, which means that the credit reporting bureaus do not hold that against you as if you were getting those inquiries because you're applying for credit. So it does not affect your personal credit score. So please understand that's just the mechanics of how those things work. And even when you're seeking personal financing, credit reporting agencies understand shopping for better rates and terms. And any inquiries that show within a 3-week period show as one inquiry. So they'll show your inquiries, but you'll have maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, but they'll all show and affect your credit risk score as if they were one inquiry. It's an important concept to understand, and hopefully it'll relieve your fear about, wow, all this shopping around for credit's going to make me look terrible on my credit score. Doesn't happen that way. All right, questions, comments, whatever you got, shoot them at me. I'm looking for questions. Don't see any yet. First of all, let me ask you a question before I see them. Was this helpful today? Raise your hand. Okay, you got that hand raising thing on the right-hand side over there. All right, I see 2 hands, 3 hands, 4 hands. I want more hands if you felt that this was worthwhile. That's much better. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so you can put the hands down now, and I appreciate those answers. If you have a hand up, I'm going to assume you want me to call on you for a question, okay? There's 2 hands up. make sure that the reason your hand is up is because you have a question you want to ask, because I'm going to call on you. All right, I'm going to ask Helmut if you can turn on your microphone. Helmut, how are you?
Good, thank you, Gordon. This is great. I really appreciate all the information that you share with us. Kudos to you greatly.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Do you have any question about how these techniques work or any of the information that I shared with you today?
Actually, I do. Okay. And it's concerning when you all mentioned that the transaction loans are typically paid back instantaneously on a double escrow. Okay. And I've gone through the essentials a few times and how you've done that in the past. How do you align those psychologically? How do you approach the people? Is this completely separate at different occasions, or do you call them? Because you have to do the bankers on one end, you have the asset-based lenders on the other, on another room, and then you may have other institutions. So what is the priority of who you should call first, who you should tell, okay, this is the way we're going to handle this double escrow? If you can go through the scenario really quick.
Sure. Yeah, sure, Helmut, I got it. Let me see if I do this, and then at the end, stay with me and tell me if I answered the question adequately or not. Here's the wonderful part about the world we live in. When I did this the first time to buy my first company, we literally had to sit people in different rooms because there was no formalized process for doing escrows the way we needed them done. But that's all changed over the years. Right now, nobody meets in rooms anymore. Everything is just submitted to the escrow company or to the escrow department at the bank, whoever is handling the escrow. And everything's set up and it's done on paper. It's all done with the escrow holders making all the adjustments, putting everything in the right column, and then delivering out the paperwork and delivering out the cash. So in other words, there'll be an escrow account where all the money goes into that escrow account. The escrow holder's sitting there holding the money. And when the escrow is closed, they just dish it out to everybody. It got wired in there from the lender, and it's going to get wired out from the escrow company to everybody. So nobody's sitting in rooms anymore. Nobody knows who's there, who's not there. They just don't know any of that. All they know is, here's the escrow instructions, here's where I put my money, and when the deal closes, here's the paperwork I get back. And then if I'm the seller, here's the money I get, and it all comes out. And then the escrow company sends everybody a sheet which shows what happened in the transaction, what went to whom, and it's like an accounting so that everybody knows they got exactly what they were supposed to get. So that's handled relatively easily today. So the only thing you need is your escrow holder to understand that there's going to be setting up two escrows. Here's what goes into escrow 1 and how it's set up. Here's what goes into escrow 2 and how it's set up. When the escrow instructions come in, those escrow instructions will be approved by anybody who has money going into or out of that escrow, agreements going into or out of that escrow. So those escrow instructions will address everything that escrow is going to do. But remember, the asset-based lender isn't party to all the escrows. They're only party to the escrow that closes the purchase and puts their money into the escrow. And then when their money goes into the escrow, they know that it went in there. They know that money has gone out to ultimately the seller, and the paperwork that's come back that you've signed before you went in there is now delivered to them. So that what they get is the paperwork which shows that they not only have made this loan and you owe them the money, but they're entitled and have a lien on the collateral that's owned by the business, because that's who they actually ended up making the loan to, is the LLC. So all that's done in the escrow departments of these companies. And depending on the state that you're in or the country that you're in, different parties can be escrow holders. In Florida, escrows are held by the lawyers. The lawyers set up in their own bank accounts these escrows. They handle all the instructions. The seller's escrow person talks to your attorney. Their attorney talks to your attorney. All the other attorneys for the lenders, anyway, everybody talks to the other party's attorney that are party to that particular escrow. But it's your attorney that sets up these double escrows. They're the only ones who know what are in both escrows. They're the only ones. Everybody else only knows what's handled through their escrow. Now, in some states, attorneys can't do that. They can't be that. They have to be a licensed escrow company or a licensed bank that has an escrow department. They have to do it. And different states do have little different rules. So when you do these things, you just have to have somebody on your team who understands the nuances of the double escrow in their area. And you can mostly find that out, frankly, when you go to escrow companies in the state, banks in the state, attorneys in the state. You just ask them, do you handle escrows? Yes. Do you handle double escrows? And if they say, what's that? A little bit of a problem. And then we even supply you, by the way, if you go into your webinar library where we've gone into these double escrows before, where we have a download that's an explanation of what the double escrow is, how it has to get set up to handle a transaction, with a sample set of escrow instructions to make it happen, that if the person you're asking to handle the double escrow says, "What's that?" You take this out, you hand it to him and says, "Here's what it is, and here's how I'd like you to handle it, and here's what I'd like you to do. And oh, by the way, I don't remember how to do it, but here's the sheet that'll tell you everything you need to set up." It'd be good if you read it first and you actually can help tell them. But the point is, we try and make it as easy for you as we can. Now, I probably gave you, Helmut, too much information and maybe not enough of what you asked for. Can you let me know what I didn't answer for you that you still want to know?
Yeah, actually, that was a great answer. And maybe you might have answered the second part of the question. Okay, I know that in the past, you chose your lenders and your bankers and your other entities locally in the state of California, as you had mentioned. But nowadays, is it possible also to have the double escrow company based, for example, in my state, Arizona, and then the banker in California, just because everything is done virtually? And or do you suggest that everyone involved in the transaction should be local?
Yeah, I suggest that everybody should be local, okay, because they'll be comfortable with each other. People in Arizona, they worry a little bit about those flaky guys in California, and so they're going to be more comfortable. But if you're dealing with a Bank of America, their offices are everywhere. They have trust departments everywhere. If you work with them to set it up, the double escrow, it doesn't matter. You could be in Arizona, the deal may close in Florida, and the Bank of America is in Florida, and they'll have their local bank handle everything. You set it up at your bank because they know you there, but they'll set it up so it actually executes in the state where you're buying the company, because that's probably where the seller is. Again, these are just logistical questions, which are always a little different in every transaction, but they always have a solution. In other words, there's always a way to solve it. What I try to do here on these kind of presentations is to give you the essence and the details sufficient enough to do the transaction, knowing that there'll always be a little logistical adjustment that has to be done so that everybody's comfortable.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
All right, you're very welcome. And hopefully that was helpful to everybody. Demond, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Can you open up your mic for me? You're still self-muted, so I can. It's good to talk with you. How have you been?
Great. Listen, I didn't really have a question. I was trying to put my hand up that I didn't have a question, but let me ask you, since I'm talking to you, I know that there's a list of different asset-based lenders across the country. Do you recommend any particular vendors you would recommend, or probably specialize in leverage or acquisitions or something like that for us, with this probably online or something like that? As any particular?
Yeah, I can answer that. Okay, if you go into our research center and you look up asset-based lenders, there's a downloadable Excel spreadsheet that shows like 276 asset-based lenders all around the country. Okay, and it has their websites, it has their emails, it has anything and everything that you'd want to know that can get you to where you can see what they specialize in and what they do, which you'll be able to see on their website. So look, if I'm buying a company and asset-based loan is important to me, it's worth a day or two of my time to download that list. It's all linked. So once you got the download, you just click on all the links, you go to their websites, you see what they specialize in, and you'll see some of them will tell you. In fact, they all tell you. We like transactions of minimum this, maximum that. So now if your deal is bigger or smaller than their minimum, their maximum, you don't go there. Okay, we like this industry and we don't like these industries. So if your deal is in an industry that they like, you keep looking further. If they don't like your industry, there's no point in going further. Then they'll tell you what geographical areas they're willing to lend into. So if they're either in your geographical area or not. So you see how you'd go through these essential elements and you eventually end up with this 200 list. You're going to end up with, let's say, 15, 20 of them that your deal fits in with what they like. So now you got the wind at your back, right? And it's worth the investment in the time to actually physically do that, because now you got real companies to talk to who are in business to do exactly what you want them to do, who like your industry, who like your size deal, who like your geographical part of the country that you're doing it in. And so you got the wind totally at your back now in putting a deal like that together. Does that make sense, Neiman?
Yes, it's Damon. It's okay. And
thank you for that.
it's okay. And real quickly, I missed webinar, and I know we were talking about forest economy. We're talking about forest things left with America, the old America, the new America, and things like that. Are you still going to transcend in some of those areas, or are you just going to head to a different direction?
When I do a webinar, I look to see how did people respond to that? What kind of questions did they ask? Did they seem to be of interest to them or not? There's always some people that have an interest in the things that I do. Some are more popular than others. So I try to refocus on areas that people really feel are important. One of them was this whole area of asset-based lending, because it's in the essentials arena. It's really important, okay, because this is right at the heart of the main technique that we teach people here. It's a little less important in pro because there's so many other techniques and methods that are used by our folks. So that's why I focused on this one. But you're going to hear me focusing now in the future on timing. As you know, in business is everything. And there's a season for everything, and everything buds, blooms, blossoms, and dies. And AI is barely past its roots, is producing a stem, never mind the plant. This is the time to get into the AI areas. We have projects that were into AI because they're a way of dramatically creating unique selling propositions within those fields and giving us cost leverage and effective and efficiency leverage. So it's important that we have to become somewhat experts ourselves for AI. At the same time, you can bet that any of the businesses you're going to buy right now, especially if they're owned by baby boomers, are going to be nowhere near employing any kind of AI. So what this is an opportunity for us to do at the same time we're implementing AI for ourselves is to reconfigure the way in which we buy businesses to look at their AI advanceability. In other words, there are certain businesses that if you apply AI to them, they are going to outcompete everything that doesn't. And that's the kind of business you want to buy. So if I can buy a business for a baby boomer who has not upgraded their technology and then within a year bring it over to an AI company that it has at its roots this incredible AI capability, then I'm going to blow away all the competition. So what we're going to be doing is two things. One is, as we do now, helping businesses buy companies, but then helping them implement AI into the companies they're buying. Okay, so the companies very quickly become worth a whole lot more. And so you're going to hear me talking a lot about that. Again, I get ahead of myself here. We try to stay at the leading edge of acquisition. That's what we do. And this is going to become the key in how you pay for the companies that you buy. Because if you buy a company that has margins of X and now you put in AI and you've increased the margins to 2X, you just made it super easy to pay for the company you just bought because you got double the cash flow now to pay for the company. So it makes it really easy to get these acquisitions not only completed, but then amortized and paid for after the acquisition is done. So it's a very important part of the process.
Okay. Listen, as always, Gordon, I appreciate your forward thinkingness and definitely your insight and your expertise. I learn a lot every time I listen to you, and I'm sure others do as well. So I appreciate you again, and I'll just get you back your mic. Thank you.
All right, let me see what else we got in the way of question here. Okay, I got a question from Kenneth. How is the double close, or I guess it's escrow, different from having the owner form an LLC and you assume the LLC? Okay, because then you're transacting what you're doing personally. Okay, the whole idea of everything we do here is to remove you personally from the transaction. In other words, if the seller forms the LLC, now you're buying the LLC from the seller. Who's buying it? You're buying it. Okay, because then you're going to own that LLC that the seller formed. You don't want to do that. You want to form your LLC, you own it, and it does everything. It does everything. And what scares people about that is they say, wait a minute, this LLC doesn't have any assets in it. It has no income. It has no business. Doesn't matter. Would you believe that there is almost never a sizable company? Now, I'm not talking about Fortune 500 companies right now, but I'm talking about mid-sized companies that are worth 25 million, 100 million, 500 million. Nobody buys a business that they don't form an SPE to buy it because that encapsulates the risk. Their risk is only what they put in the SPE. That risk can't come back to the main company. Okay, it's the same thing is true for you. You don't want any risk in this transaction coming back to you personally. You want to have a safety wall between you and that exposure. So you want the purchaser to be a company that you own so that the liability of whatever happens in that transaction stops at the SPE, stops at the LC that you formed. Okay, so you still own everything. You can still pass through everything to yourself, but you've now minimized the risk and you've quantified who the buyer is so that when you apply for loans, when you do all that, everything is done in that vehicle. And then your lenders, they're going to look at what's true for the SPE. And you say, all right, I don't have any assets in there. You will have assets in there. What assets are you going to have in there? All the ones that you acquire. That's what's going to be in there. So the company's going to have assets. The company's going to have cash flow. If you have an investor, it's going to have your investor's capital in that company. So the company is going to have substance the instant you buy it. It's a going business. And it's got the benefit of the history of the company that you just bought, including all of its asset structure. So that's why that is such an important thing to do. But it is definitely different. Okay, you do not want to just have the seller form an LLC and then you personally buy the LLC from them. Will AI change the way you do a double close? No, that all happens basically the same way. AI may perform administrative functions that go on in those escrows and how they are processed internally, but it's not going to change what it does or how it does it. All that's going to stay basically the same. Give an example of AI added value for a business. All right, let's say, for example, that I'm buying a car rental business, okay? Car rental business. Right now, how does a reservation get taken? How does that reservation find its way into the central system that is probably on computer? How does it get delivered to the rental counter where you have a person who interacts with another person? The renter is interacting with a representative of the renter. So you have all these human interactions that are taking place that require real people to do them now. And real people are expensive. Okay, they have to pay the rent, they have to feed the kids, they have to send them to school, they got to earn a certain amount of money to do all that stuff and buy a house and take a vacation and all that stuff. AI doesn't need to do any of that stuff. It's all resides on some very expensive computers, but it's so highly efficient, and the speed at which things take place within that are just more efficient for administrative functions than human beings are. Now, I'm not so sure that the AI is ever really going to compete with human ingenuity. And if it does, I don't think that's my lifetime. As fast as it's moving, I just don't think it's my lifetime. So in my future, what I see is the benefit of taking companies that have a lot of administrative overhead because of the real people involved and converting all that to AI. I'll give you an example that will blow your mind. The big four accounting firms, the giant accounting firms, one of them just spent $200 million their systems to AI. When they're finished, they believe they will have gone from personnel worldwide of 217 people to 12,000 people. That's how many less people will be required to perform the administrative functions that are built into that level of CPA firm. If you didn't do that and you're one of the big four, you can't compete with the one that did. So if I were buying today a small accounting firm that I could now put AI into, I could blow other small competing accounting firms out of the ballpark because none of them can compete with me. And I can put in some of that saved money into reducing fees. I can put some of that saved money into more services that I give without charging more for them. I can put more money into something accountants don't think a lot about, which is called marketing, an aggressive effort to get more clients that I serve. And I can go out and buy other accounting firms who have a high cost factor to all their stuff. And as soon as I buy them, I put them on my AI platform. And now I can pay for something that's worth much more to me than it was to the seller with cash flow that makes paying for it a piece of cookie. Okay. So hopefully that answers your question. And it's an example of how I would use AI to make me an effective business acquirer. Okay, is it possible to stack lenders on assets and revenue to receive a greater sum than the amount of asking from the seller? The answer is yes, those things are possible, but it gets a little difficult depending on how good the lenders are about tying up their capital. But everybody knows you can get a first lien on a mortgage, okay, where you get your primary mortgage lender to put a first on it. Then you give the seller a second, so it's the same asset. Now you're leveraging more money on it. And then you might even go to a third lender who gives you a third or a fourth or a fifth. They stand behind everybody. It's very risky to them, but some lenders do that. So you're taking the same asset and you're leveraging it until you may owe more money on the asset than the leverage you've done on it. It's hard to do that, but it can be done. Also, there's a technique we have in our pro workbook where we go through how the commercial landowners in New York in particular, especially in New York City, have borrowed up to 125% on their land and buildings and how they do that. It's a little sophisticated for me to try and give it to you here, especially since I only got 2 minutes left. But it's in our pro program because, as I say, there we develop out method after method, strategy, technique after strategy and technique until we blow your mind as to every way there is to do this. But the answer is yes, it is possible to do those things. You must be talking about a relational database query information. I can tell you that you've never coded in your life and are taking errant nonsense, unfortunately. That's not true. We have 10 AI companies that we are now working with. Each one of them specializes in a different area, in a different form of platform by which AI is embedded in. In one of the recent webinars we did, when we were explaining to people that if they're going to put their companies on AI, that these are the companies they're going to have to talk to in order to get the proper AI base and platform into that. So, David, while I appreciate your concern that I might be giving out information that is maybe not usable by everybody, the thing I would just like to assure you is that before we did that, we looked into those 10 different platforms to see what they can do, and they are at different levels of progress. But right now, the one that everybody's familiar with are the chat box. The companies that are like the CPA company that I mentioned, the one that's going from 217,000 people to 12,000, That's not what they're doing. They don't have chat box, okay? They don't have a chat box. What they have is real API companies that they hired with top level consultants to bring them to use what's at least state of the art right now, and using different platforms programmed in different methods using different data sources that give them the ability to do what they need to do. So I appreciate your concerns, but the field is very complex. Not everybody knows everything, and certainly I don't claim to know everything, but we're hiring people who are extraordinarily knowledgeable, doing it for the very top businesses in the country. And research that we've done and the experience we've had so far tell us that all of this is here now, at the very least at a beta level. And it's not going to be that much longer till those are released in any and every form we need to do the things that we can do. And I invite your thoughts and comments further. Again, none of us know everything. Our view of the field so far is very robust and it's coming along very rapidly. All right, let me see if there are any more questions on here. No, that's it for me. We're past the hour. I want to thank you all for your enthusiastic presence here today. For those of you who are part of our pro group, we have a meeting on the second Wednesday of next month, and I look forward to meeting with you all on the fourth Wednesday of next month. Until then, I wish you all the best of success.